It's Wednesday, November 22. This is the news on PBCJ. I am Simone Absalom. Members of the opposition were absent yesterday evening as the National Identification and Registration Bill was passed into law in the House of Representatives. Opposition leader Dr. Peter Phillips moved a motion calling for the bill to be withdrawn and referred to a joint select committee for further review. This triggered a debate over parliamentary rules and a subsequent 20-minute suspension of the sitting. This stretched into a one-hour recess, but still the opposition did not return to the House following a suspension of the sitting.
Mr. Speaker, it is our intention at a later point, Mr. Speaker, to indicate that this House resolve that this bill be withdrawn and that the matter be referred to a joint select committee. Along with the regulations covering operational matters when they are ready, and along with the Data Protection Act to be considered and allow all members of the public an opportunity to consider this matter, which has obviously generated tremendous public interest and where there are deep concerns about the provisions of clauses in the bill.
This triggered a debate over parliamentary rules and a subsequent 20-minute suspension of the sitting.
Members, if you do not behave yourself, I am either going to adjourn the House or ask you to leave. Dr. Guy, I'm asking you to behave yourself in the House. I'm going to ask the Marshal to remove you from the House. Mr. Speaker, you have the right to suspend the members that disobey you. You have the right to suspend them if they disobey you.
With the opposition absent, the government continued the debate, and Prime Minister Holness blasted the opposition for their stances on some aspects of the bill. Aspects that he said were first introduced by the PMP when they had previously formed the government.
Mr. Speaker, since my involvement in the bill, and the bill that was developed under my watch, we did not have in that bill a requirement for compulsory registration. We started off from a position that we would seek to get the public to comply by virtue of them seeing the benefits of the bill. It was in discussions with a select team from the opposition that the opposition insisted that it be mandatory. And Mr. Speaker, the hypocrisy that I have had to listen to. But you know, Mr. Speaker, my mother always tells me, hold your tongue. Hold your tongue. Because you know, Mr. Speaker, again the falsehood about this bill not having the benefit of public discourse. In 2000, the then government, which is the opposition now, took a bill to Parliament, carried it to a joint select committee, and in that bill, Mr. Speaker, they had a clause for it to be mandatory. And guess what the fine was? $100,000 at that time. Now, if you brought $100,000 and added interest to it, inflation and everything to bring it up to current dollars, it would be a significant amount of penalty. So it is very disingenuous for the opposition to now come and try to claim a ground that they themselves rejected.
In the end, the government passed the bill unopposed.
Mr. Speaker, you know, I can only raise these issues in the House. Hope that the press will carry the discourse as it was intended. Mr. Speaker, I therefore ask the concurrence of the House, the acceptance of the amendments from the Senate.
Hear, hear,
Those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? No. Ayes have it.
RJR News spoke with the opposition leader, Dr. Peter Phillips, following the passage of the bill. He signaled that the row over the legislation is far from over. He describes the passage as underhanded and says consultations will be held with other groups to get the views of the people. Contractor General Dirk Harrison has referred Southeast St. Anne Member of Parliament Lisa Hanna to the Director of Public Prosecutions, the DPP. The Contractor General's recommendations were made in a 55-page report tabled in the House of Representatives. The report was compiled following an investigation which began in 2015. We have more in this report from Carol Francis.
The Office of the Contractor General, acting on behalf of the Contractor General, initiated on June 3, 2015, an investigation into allegations of acts of impropriety, irregularity and corruption at the Office of the Member of Parliament for South East St. Anne and in the award of certain government contracts by the St. Anne Parish Council, hereinafter referred to as the St. Anne Municipal Corporation. The OCG's decision to commence a formal investigation into the subject matter followed upon the office's receipt of a letter of complaint on May 26, 2015. The reference letter, which was addressed to the Contractor General, is being treated as anonymous to protect the identity of the complainants. The letter, which bore the subject, Corruption at the PMP South East St. Anne Constituency Office, listed a number of allegations, including rampant corruption at the People's National Party Constituency Office in Monigue, South East St. Anne. The writer states that Ms. Hanna was repeatedly advised that political workers based in her constituency office were involved in, quote, a racket to rob poor people of the proceeds of publicly funded works project, end quote. It states further that Ms. Hanna was told that a member of the PMP's office is on tape stating that she, Ms. Hanna, is to receive kickbacks from government contracts being taken by the MP. The letter was reportedly accompanied by audio recordings. Other allegations were made concerning the issuance of farm work tickets, fraudulent receipt of money in this regard, as well as cases of sexual abuse. After conducting its investigations, the OCG concluded, among other things, that the failure of the St. Anne Municipal Corporation to locate and produce the justification for the award of contracts in 25 specific instances amounted to a breach of the Government of Jamaica procurement guidelines. The OCG also concluded that there is an apparent dysfunctional relationship between the Office of the Secretary-Manager of the St. Anne Corporation and the Roads and Works Department of the Corporation, as well as between and among the staff complement of the Road and Works Department at varying levels. It further adds that the implementation of contracts portrays gross deficiencies and incompetence in various areas, namely the admitted presentation of blank contracts for the signature of contractors, the failure to measure works in all instances prior and subsequent to the engagement of the contractor, and the failure of officers within the corporation to verify the satisfactory completion of all works prior to approving same for payment to be unsatisfactory and unacceptable. According to the report, the practice of group contracts of payments, which in effect is a grouping of small payments into a sum less than $500,000, is a suspicious informal practice which has been facilitated by both the Office of the Member of Parliament for South East St. Anne and the St. Anne Municipal Corporation. The recommendation, implementation, and execution of a number of the contracts outlined in this report bears the likeness of the offense of a conspiracy to defraud the government of Jamaica, involving the Office of the Member of Parliament and again the St. Anne Corporation and the named contractors. The OCG concludes that the recommendations by Ms. Lisa Hanna in respect of approximately 12 persons affiliated or associated with the People's National Party gives rise to a conflict of interest and may be regarded as being tantamount to cronyism and or favoritism. The report notes that the question of law which must be answered is whether Ms. Hanna, as Member of Parliament and in this regard a public official, willfully neglected to perform her duty and or is guilty of misconduct by acting fraudulently in making recommendations for the award of government contracts to persons employed in her constituency office and to relatives of persons employed in the constituency office. Based on the evidence presented by representatives of the St. Anne Municipal Corporation, the OCG referred a copy of its special report of investigation to the Office of the Director of Public Prosecutions. The OCG questions whether the actions of Ms. Hanna in making recommendations for the award of the contract to 12 persons affiliated with her or her office gives rise to a conflict of interest. Further, whether Ms. Hanna, as Member of Parliament and in this regard a public servant, willfully neglected to perform her duty and or willfully misconducted herself by making recommendations for the award of government contracts amounting to an abuse of the public's trust by acting fraudulently. Among the recommendations made by the OCG is that all debushing and drain cleaning works be discontinued with immediate effect island-wide, or in the alternative, that the relevant due diligence and contract management systems of implementing agencies be strengthened. In an effort to avoid even the slightest perception of political bias, conflict of interest and or favoritism, the OCG also recommends that members of Parliament and councillors refrain from making recommendations for the awards of contracts to employees, political party affiliates or operatives. The OCG is of the considered opinion that where this is permitted, the stain of corruption, favoritism and cronyism, whether real or perceived, will taint the integrity of the contract, project or program. It is further recommended that the Auditor General's Department conducts an immediate and comprehensive audit of the contract award and procurement practices of the St. Anne Municipal Corporation insofar as it relates to the implementation and contract award process for CDF projects, contracts and programs.
The government intends to ban mining in the Cockpit country areas of rural St. Elizabeth and Trelawney. Prime Minister Andrew Holness, in making the announcement in a statement to the House of Representatives, said that his government has declared that no mining will be permitted in the Cockpit country protected area.
The government is declaring that no mining will be permitted in the Cockpit country protected area. In this regard, the Mining Act and any applicable existing mining licenses will have to be amended to close these areas to mining. The government is of the view that this area is too valuable in terms of its ecological and hydrological importance and uniqueness to allow mining which may result in permanent and irreversible harm and deprive future generations of the benefits of this national asset. Mr. Speaker, while we forego the extraction of millions of tons of high-grade bauxite and limestone with potential earnings of billions of United States dollars, billions. That's a separate question. And we cannot put a price tag on the loss to our water resources and our biodiversity.
Noting that the decision to forego the exploitation of the area would cost the country millions of United States dollars, the Prime Minister argued that the government could not put a price tag on the loss of the country's water resources and biodiversity. In terms of settling the boundaries of the Cockpit country, Holness said that the area to be protected will include the existing forest reserves, significant hydrological features, and cultural and heritage sites. He also noted that the 2005 boundary determined by geologist Paris Leo Ais Jr. has been recognized by the Cabinet as the boundary of the Cockpit country and will be declared and gazetted.
The government intends to continue to partner with private landowners, local groups, and other stakeholders, including the Akonkpong Maroons, in the development of a comprehensive management plan for the area. Implementation of this plan will require dedicated resources from the national budget as well as donor support. The management plan will be subject to Cabinet approval, following which it will be tabled in Parliament.
The government's actions were in response to a Save the Cockpit Country petition launched in August by the Jamaica Environmental Trust on the Office of the Prime Minister's website and surpassed 15,000 signatures a full week before its September 30 deadline. The petition outlined that the area was Jamaica's largest remaining natural forest, which also supplies about 40% of Western Jamaica's water needs. Ratings agency Standard & Poor's S&P says Jamaican banks are more stable than they were 2 years ago, but their regulatory oversight is, quote, weak, end quote, and reactive. According to the BICRA report on Jamaica released last week, S&P rates the banking sector of Jamaica as B/stable/B and classified it as Group 9 under its banking industry country risk assessment, alongside Lebanon, Kenya, and Argentina. The rating agency uses BICRA to determine a bank's anchor as the starting point in assigning an issuer credit rating. S&P noted that Jamaica's banking policy has improved, and it expects further progress in terms of liquidity and capital requirements. Jamaica has 8 commercial banking operations: National Commercial Bank, Scotiabank Jamaica, JN Bank, Sagicor Bank Jamaica, First Caribbean International Bank Jamaica, JMMB Bank, First Global Bank, and Citibank NA. S&P indicated that some players are experiencing flat profits due to risk mitigation, aggressive competition, and rising operating expenses. The Heart Foundation of Jamaica wants to raise $5 million from its annual Run for Your Heart Lapathon, which will take place this Sunday, November 26. This year marks the 38th staging of the event, which aims to raise funds in order to maintain the foundation's services to the public and to buy medical supplies needed to keep it operational. PBCJ spoke to the Heart Foundation's Senior Manager for Marketing, Fund and Development, Karen Anderson, about the event.
We are there to promote heart health in Jamaica. So we do all types of screenings of tests, from the very basic to the advanced tests. And it's just to try and get persons to understand how important it is that heart health is. Heart disease is the #1 killer of persons in Jamaica and globally. And so it's a really important issue that we try to get everybody to understand their health.
Ms. Anderson said the registration is still open and companies, schools and individuals who have teams can contact the Heart Foundation, which is located on 28 Beechwood Avenue in St. Andrew.
So everybody can come out, you can walk, run, jog, and you can do as many laps as you want, and you try to get as many people to sponsor how many laps you can do. So we have a lot of activities for the kids. We have a tug of war that's going to be taking place between the Jamaica Constabulary Force and JDF. We have a bounce about a rock climbing wall. And we have a football skills challenge also that is going to be there. So there are lots of activities, a clown, a face painting, maybe some snow cone activities. So we're really excited for persons to come out. We're also entreating the companies to also come out in your teams to help us raise awareness for heart health in Jamaica and to really get our funding so that we can continue to subsidize the rates that we offer to our patients right now.
In regional news, United Nations boss Antonio Guterres wants the international community to revisit its concessionary development loan policies for the benefit of the Caribbean. Mr. Guterres made the call while addressing a special CARICOM UN high-level pledging conference in New York yesterday. He noted that most of the countries impacted by devastating hurricanes are middle-income countries, and because of that, they are deprived of the form of assistance or concessional loans that low-income countries can have access to. CMC has that report.
Many Caribbean countries are classified as middle income, so they have limited access to concessional finance. They also have high levels of debt, much of it incurred through investment in recovery and resilience. To build long-term resilience, I urge you to explore eligibility for concessional finance, reinsurance mechanisms, and ways to leverage the remittances they receive. It is time for long-term mechanisms that recognize vulnerabilities as the new normal. We can no longer rely on exceptions and ad hoc decisions. Countries that are disproportionately vulnerable to disaster and economic shocks must be able to access financing on terms and conditions that are appropriate to their specific needs and circumstances.
In sports, the 3-month-plus wait for the final phase of the Caribbean Football Union Under-20 Women's Championships qualifiers has now come to an end for Jamaica's young reggae girls as they bow into action against the Dominican Republic today. The Jamaicans will, in the curtain-raising contest, start at 5 p.m., that's 4 p.m. Jamaica time, at the Warner Park Sporting Complex in Basseterre, St. Kitts. Hours before Haiti takes on hosts in the feature contest at 7:30 p.m. The team had its first extensive preparation with the full squad yesterday since departing the island for Trinidad and Tobago last week. And in cricket, Trinidad and Tobago's Red Force captain says his men will bounce back when they take on Leeward Islands in round 5 action of the regional 4-day competition.
Wicked Red Guyana made a massive 484 for 8 declared before bowling out TNT twice for paltry totals of 120 and 147. It was expected that Red Force skipper Dinesh Ramdan would express concern about his team's batting.
Yeah, just about the department. I think for the last 3 games we had some good partnerships. I think this game we didn't string any partnerships. We get starts and we didn't carry on. Come up against a good Guyana bowling attack. I didn't think we did handle the pressure quite well. The guys put the ball in the right areas. They get wickets as well as we give away some soft wickets, easy dismissals.
Despite the outcome, the team members are in good spirits, and Ramdan even touched on some of the positives from the clash.
Yeah, Brian Charles bowled really well. The fast bowlers, they stuck it out on a flat pitch. Guys got started, young Django again, hopefully he can carry on. It's really good to see that he gets started, but not carrying on, so hopefully he can do it quite quickly and get a big score on his belt.
TNT next play hosts Leeward Islands from November 30th, and Ramdan says Team Red Force cannot be written off ahead of the clash.
One bad game, bad game don't make the team a bad team for the entire season, so hopefully we can just bounce back from this and go forward.
Ramdan took a tumble while fielding and was injured. However, he isn't too worried about it.
It's not that serious. Hopefully I can get that week off rest and come back fully fit for the next game. And there's some work with the physio. We'll be all right.
Meanwhile, Ramdan's opposite number, Leon Johnson, who made a colossal 165, was elated with a win.
Yeah, it felt good. Come to Trinidad here and get a victory. We set out to get a victory, and we didn't think it would be that easy probably, but we still very thankful. I think the bowlers did excellent days 3 and 4. Right, the bowler Trinidad within 4 sessions on that track wasn't easy, and they put the ball in good areas and they got the results for it.
And that's it for the weather report. Thanks so much for making it PBCJ. Remember, we are the People's Station.